Now, though, we're going to get on to our next book. This one is We Were Young by Niamh Campbell. Jamie, this was your book. Tell us all about it.
I was so happy when I was given a copy of this to read. Niamh won a major short story award 2 years ago, the kind of biggest short story award in the world. So for me, I was like, oh, this is so exciting to read this book. And I just started reading straight away. And it's beautiful, beautiful prose. I mean, anything I read about her, she's a stylist. So the writing, when I read the first few pages, I was like, oh, this just takes a bit of concentration to get into. But it was almost like hearing a piece of music that's just a little bit more complex. But once you get it, you really get it. And so this kind of style that she has, her descriptions of Dublin are incredible. But at the heart of the story is this guy called Cormac, who is 37, like myself. And there was a bit in the book where somebody says to him, you're almost 40. And he says, I'm a long way from 40, a few years yet. So I have to say, I'm quite triggered by mentions of middle age. But I have to say, his character is an incredible character in that he has left a small town and he is a photographer and now lecturer. But his life hasn't kind of panned out the way it is. It's kind of that sense of he hasn't managed to buy a home. He's renting in central Dublin. And in a way, a life that would have seemed quite fun maybe 15 years earlier is really starting to feel a bit thin on the ground. I think Niamh is very good on sort of describing the late millennial sort of post-crash experience of like not being able to get get on the property ladder and kind of being shut out in that way from progressing in life. And I just think her descriptions of Dublin, there's a big theme of home in the book. I felt everyone in the books, their home is quite fragile, or even her, because he's a brother who's done the finance thing and is, married and, but like the marriage is on the rocks and she's often kicked out of the house, So I think it's just a beautiful novel that I think in years to come, people will read closely to get a sense of how it was to be someone who's late millennial in the times we currently live in. It's really beautifully written. He is infuriating at times. He's going to these arts events all the time. And like, he just seems to always hiccup somebody at these events. He's always like, he's a real man for the women at times. And to a point, he's quite unattractive. But then there's these other sort of poignant moments when he's at his father's funeral, and there's an awful story about what happened to a brother who died years earlier, and there's a trauma within him that's never been quite healed. He's almost never quite grown up. He's like arrested development. Like he got to an age and hasn't managed to progress to the next stage in his life. And it's really, this book is at a moment where it's starting to wear really, really thin. Beautiful book. Like I just think the sentences, because she has, as I said, this unique way of writing. I lived in Dublin for 8 years, and her way of describing Dublin in this way made me see Dublin with kind of new eyes, with new descriptions. She just sees things in streets that I've never noticed. I was just absorbed. And it is, as I said, one of these books which she has her own unique way of doing things, but just give it the 10 pages, enjoy the style, get into it, and then it really just like rewards you for that. So I was trying to think who I'd compare it to. So if I was a reader, and if you liked Hilary Fannin, she had a book out, The Way to Love, last year, or kind of about a middle-aged kind of situation, again, someone whose 20s is coming back into their lives again. Or I was thinking Colin Barrett as well, who writes, once again, has his own unique voice. And once you get it, it's amazing. So loved it.
Stephanie, are you sold?
Yeah, I'm definitely sold on that. I'll give that 10 pages. No, because I know I'll give it 10 pages, and then he's saying it'll get me through. But I can find those when people have an odd sentence structure. Now, not quite like Joycean, but if people use language in an odd kind of way, it can be enough of a barrier for me to be like, oh, this is giving me a headache, I'm not going to stick with it. But based on that description, I definitely will stick with it.
It's nowhere near as extreme as Joyce, so don't worry about that.
Are there a lot of commas in it?
It's not
have it here.
A holiday read at the airport where you
I want to see how many commas are in the first sentence. That's a good judge or something.
It's quite relatable, though, I think, for the housing crisis. And like a lot of people not able to get on the property ladder.
There are 3 commas in the first sentence. I mean, that is some punctuation. In a bare room with the Sacred Heart, a tin full of water issues steam gingerly under hanging lamps.
Sold?
I'll give it 10 pages.
Okay, good.
No, do. It's really, when I started reading it, I was at the 10th page going, and there's another 290 pages. You're like, is it going to require this level of concentration to read the whole book? But it isn't. It's like a music that you just start understanding, and it gets way easier. And then when it gets really emotional scenes of the father dying and the funeral and him kind of going back home to, his mother's home. And there's such a claustrophobia in it, because when he's in Dublin, I realized every scene, everyone's freezing. The houses are freezing. I was like, this is really cold. But when she goes home to his mother's house, and they go to a friend's, an elderly lady's house, and the heating is on, and it's chintz, and it's suffocating. I just think her descriptions it's so alive. It's a really wonderful book.